So sitting generally, sitting very properly, either in a chair, cross-legged, spine straight, this generally is good for enhancing, supporting the vividness and clarity, right? And therefore overcoming laxity and dullness. Supine position, very good for overcoming excitation, agitation of the mind, for developing stability, coming out of a deep sense of relaxation. And that's where you want your stability coming. You don't want your stability coming by sheer raw effort. I will get this mind to shut up. I will get this mind to settle down and just ram it down, okay? Good for the short term, no good for the long term. It's too tiring. We get exhausted, okay? So those two postures. Now, for Vipassana practice, then walking and standing can be good. For Shamatha practice, not so useful. If you go deep into Shamatha and you're walking, you'll probably bump into something, right? Or you'll just fall over. You'll lose your balance. You go deeply in the mind, you fall right over. So either sitting or supine, generally better for the shamatha. Buddhaghosa, in the Visuddhimagga, the path of purification, simply comments, whichever posture is effective for developing concentration is the one to be adopted. So in other words, be pragmatic. Just see what works, okay? So we're not just trying to maintain a tradition here or practice some kind of pure dharma. Pure dharma is dharma that really works to purify the mind, not just following some tradition. Then we can conclude here, and then we'll go right back to practice. But I mentioned earlier asanga. I think I quoted this earlier. I'll be very brief. But just to see the relationship between mindfulness and introspection, it says mindfulness and introspection are taught. For the first, mindfulness, prevents the attention from straying from the meditative object. In other words, protects us from forgetfulness. While the second, namely introspection, recognizes that the attention is straying. So the introspection is like a guard, it's like a sentry, like a spy, observing, monitoring, and then letting you know as quickly as possible, have you lost balance? Almost like on a bicycle. Are you tipping to the left or are you tipping to the right? Tipping into laxity, tipping into excitation, and then you remember what to do, and now I know you all remember, right? Excitation, relax, and then come back. Dullness, arouse, and focus, okay? And Shantideva, again, in brief, this alone is the definition of introspection. It is the repeated examination of the state of the body and mind. Okay? I won't go into the three signs. I think there's really no need to do this. It's the preliminary sign, acquired sign, counterpart sign. If you're interested, you'll find this in many excellent texts from the Theravada tradition. The Bhante Gunaratna has a text, Serenity and Insight, I think it's called, covers that. My own book, The Attention Revolution, covers that in detail. I'll mention only briefly here, it's a big, big topic. I'll mention only briefly this final point on this one page of notes. Just the power of the practice of samadhi itself for transforming the mind. It's not just a method for simply developing attention skills, all right? As if you're a tennis player and you want to be able to focus, you know, it's not just that. It's rather the samadhi is almost like a key. The development of shamatha, development of dhyana is a key to establishing a much broader and richer, diverse quality of mental balance altogether. Now we can see that by practicing shamatha, eventually achieving jhana. You get all of these 5 factors of jhana, all of these indicative of a really healthy state of mind, but also in the freedom of obscurations. Imagine, because these qualities, they linger to a very considerable extent in between meditation sessions. You're not completely free of them, but it's as if temporarily your mental afflictions are largely crippled or disabled or sent into hibernation. So in between sessions, if you've gone very far along the path of shamatha, it's not to say you're free of mental afflictions, but as Tsongkhapa, a great Tibetan master, said, number one, your mental afflictions, ill will, craving, and so forth, they won't arise very frequently. And when they do, they're quite feeble. It's almost like, what, like that. They're kind of disoriented. That is, the quality of mind is not conducive for the arousal and domination by these mental afflictions. It's almost hostile to the arousal and continuance of mental afflictions. So that's good. This indicates your mind is exceptionally healthy. It's as if you've elevated your whole psychological immune system. So it's not to say you can never feel anger or craving and so forth, but the immune system is really boosted up. And you have exceptional mental health, and that's what shamatha is about. Now, having practiced this for 32 years and then taught it a lot, especially last year, it was so obvious when I led these 2 3-month retreats. we're mostly practicing, 90% we're practicing shamatha. 10, 15% for immeasurables. But what I found for these 70 people that went through this training last year, a lot of them, perhaps even all of them, by doing these simple practices, mindfulness of breathing, settling the mind, their priorities really shifted. I wasn't telling them, oh, you have to do this, you have to develop renunciation. No, I was not giving them a hard sell. Just by doing this practice, the priorities started shifting. Less interest in just getting more money, less interest in just mundane pursuits. Coming out, oh, now I see, I really want to. I want to spend more time in meditation when this retreat's over. I want to practice 3, 4, 5 hours. It just became a priority for them because they saw for themselves. Not because I'm some kind of a charismatic teacher or I'm very smart and I can persuade them by tricky logic. No. I'm only with them a couple of hours a day. They're meditating for 8 hours a day. But by shifting, it shifted their priorities. And a lot of them were saying, oh, I'm near retirement. When I retire, I already have a cabin. I'm going into retreat. I'm going to spend much more time. Or I'm going to change the way I do business. So that's really, it shifted conation. The kind of desires, priorities, intentions that people have really has an impact. We found this to be empirically true. Right? So that's one point. You start developing more authentic desires, more reality-based desires, meaningful desires, motivations, priorities. Attention, of course. That's what it's all about. So you get greater attentional balance? Of course you do. Cognitive balance. One of the major cognitive imbalances is this involuntary spraying onto experience our own preconceptions, our projections, what psychologists call transference. You're engaging with one person and then imputing on that person your associations, memories, and so forth of another person. Oh, you're just like my mother. Oh, you're like my former wife. Oh, you're like blah, blah, blah. Well, then we don't even see the person in front of us. You know, and so it's not only with people, but so often we're just this how do you say, cognitive hyperactivity disorder. That's what I call it. Where we can't see reality clearly because we are pushing so many of our own preconceptions onto experience. This is delusional. So there's cognitive hyperactivity, and there's what I call cognitive deficit. And that's where we are just not attentive. You know, we're talking with someone, and they're talking and talking, and they think, what? You know, what? Like we just snapped out, like we came from another planet or something. So we weren't even engaged with anything. The mind just spaced out. We call it AWOL. You're just absent without leave. You're just gone, right? And so practicing shamatha, developing these attention skills, then we're attending closely, which means we're not projecting. We're actually attending to what is in the present moment. What is the person saying? What's the facial expression? What's the body language? That's in a personal engagement or watching traffic in business and so forth. We are really getting it. We're attending to what is being presented, and we're not going AWOL. So we're not projecting and we're not absent. We are simply attentive to what's happening. That's cognitive balance. And finally, we found this a lot, that by practicing this, it really did add to emotional balance. All right? The emotions still arise, which is good. We don't want to be emotionally dead. But having this internal equilibrium, it gave rise, it really enhanced what Daniel Goleman has become famous for calling emotional intelligence. Right? We find emotional unintelligence, where people become emotionally very reactive, volatile. You know, the stoplight turns red. Oh, I hate it when that happens. You know, oh, this makes me so happy. The mind is jittery. It's just firing off at anything. Oh, I'm so happy about this. Oh, that really pisses me off. Oh, this is exciting. Oh, I'm afraid of that. You know, like, calm down. What's your problem? Because the mind has no stability to it. It's just emotionally hyper-reactive. Right? Not healthy, not useful. And so this practice, it gets you grounded. The mind calms down, it settles down. We attend, emotions arise. Maybe sometimes sadness, sometimes happiness, whatever, fine. But there's emotional poise, a ballast, kind of a gravitas that comes in, part of being emotionally intelligent. So that's a short thumbnail sketch of the shamatha, the relationship of vipassana. I think it was here that Buddhaghosa says, oh yes, right at the top, once you've achieved the actual state of the first jhana, there's a lot of, I think, how do you say, counterfeit currency going around. People really not study very carefully and hear a few slogans about jhana and then say, oh, you can achieve jhana in a weekend or 1 month or this or that. I've achieved people will say, I've achieved fourth jhanas, I've achieved all this. And mostly it's not, I think, not consciously being dishonest. We just don't know. You have to study a little. You have to study more than a little bit. You have to penetrate through the surface and see what's really the significance of this. We see that some of the great disciples of the Buddha himself, they really had to struggle to achieve the first jhana. And then after that, it went quite smoothly. It said even Buddha Shakyamuni, I believe it said, after his 6 years of asceticism, he didn't just snap his fingers and achieve the first jhana. He had to work at it a bit, right? So it's not so easy. And when you do achieve it, it's not just, oh, I can, oh yes, I can, do I have applied thought? Oh, I can do that. How about sustained thought? Oh, I can do that. Well-being, oh yeah, I feel pretty good. Bliss, yeah, I'm quite happy. Single-pointed, yeah, I'm really focused. I've got the first jhana, you know. Sometimes it's so simplistic that people just look at the 5 factors, I've got those. And so in America especially, I think there's a lot of, frankly, false advertising or false currency, like counterfeit currency going around. If you'd like, from Buddhaghosa, who was not, he was not creative, he's not innovative, he was preservative, really trying to tell us what went on for like the first 800 years in this great Theravada tradition, knowing there had been many people who achieved first jhana. If you've achieved the actual state of the first jhana, how long can you just sit in very fine samadhi with the 5 jhana factors, focused, clear, stable? How long? 24 hours. You can sit, and you can sit, he said, like a strong man that can stand for 24 hours and not fall over. So if somebody says, oh, I've achieved first jhana, they said, oh, good, sit for 24 hours, I'll watch you. Right? Or send them to NUS. That'll be very interesting for the psychologists studying attention, because they've never heard of anything like that, right? So it's not so easy. And this means not 24 hours, grit your teeth and bear it. Like, is it over yet? No, you just slipped into samadhi, boom, smooth, quite effortless. 24 hours. That's the actual state of the first jhana. In the Tibetan tradition, they're really focusing primarily on the access to the first jhana. And for that, the Dalai Lama, many of them, they all speak with one voice. If you've had access to the first jhana, you should be able to slip into samadhi quite effortlessly, remain in this really quite flawless samadhi. No laxity, no excitation, focused, the mind entirely focused within the mental realm. Your senses have shut down for 4 hours minimum. Effortlessly. Very clean, spick and span samadhi. And the mind is imbued with a quality called prashrapta in Sanskrit. The mind is pliant, it's malleable, it's buoyant, it's light, it's supple. If you want to visualize, you really visualize. If you want to investigate in vipassana, you investigate. If you want to remember, you remember. It's really like a serviceman that says, yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am. Ma'am, yes, ma'am. What can I do? What do you want me to do? I'm ready. You know, really right there to serve you well, whatever you want to do. So access, 4 hours. Full jhana, 24 hours. Those are just the outer sign, right? But most importantly, the inner quality of really a serviceable mind. And so I think this is really the Buddhist recipe for achieving exceptional degree of mental health and balance, as the foundation for developing extraordinary degrees of compassion, loving kindness, bodhicitta, vipassana. First, make your bowl clean, then pour in the ambrosia of the Dharma. Okay? Let's jump back into the pool again. Okay? One more session, then we'll have time for question and answer. So we'll have time to discuss this practice tomorrow, and I will look at the kind of the classical instructions on it. But right now we have a lot of backlog of questions from day before yesterday and yesterday. So quite a lot here, and time is short. We have just 20 minutes for people leaving at 9:30, 35 minutes for others. So I'll try to give brief answers. What are your thoughts on how we can practice and engage Buddhism, a collective ethic, Shila, engage, for example, in the problem of collective violence that we are complicit in as a society, as a nation, such as the Iraq War that I spoke of last night? This is, I think, again, this is an enormous topic. That's a topic for a whole conference. I think the short answer is through collaboration. Collaboration. And that is working with people in various areas with having different qualities of expertise. Working with people in education, in business, in government, and so forth, and bringing the spirit of this ethics into these multiple fields. The Dalai Lama has a wonderful book in this regard, knowing full well that most people in the world are not Buddhist and will not become Buddhist. They're committed to being secular, or they have another spiritual path. So he's written this book, maybe 10 years ago, called Ethics for the New Millennium. It's core Buddhist ethics, but presented in a very open way without kind of Buddhist worldview there, so you don't have to convert to Buddhism. But I think bringing this into business, into economics, government, education, the healthcare system, and did I say education? I think this is the way to go. And I'm seeing some very, very good work being done in environmental studies. So this is happening, but no one will have all the answers. So we who are trained extensively in Buddhism, we can certainly tell a Buddhist message, but then how do you apply that in business, economics, education, government, and so forth? That's where collaboration is the key. And I think there's a lot of promise there. There's a rapidly growing interest, also in the whole field of mental health. The Vipassana tradition seems to be insight-seeking, discovering truth. The Socrates-Euclid tradition focuses on critical thinking and justification. Where do these appear in the Buddha or the Buddhist tradition? There are some fundamental differences there that I think are quite interesting, and that is when we go back to the early Greeks, especially culminating in Aristotle. In my understanding, now I'm not a scholar, I mean a really professional scholar of Greek antiquity or Greek philosophy, but it does seem pretty clear that the highest faculty of a human being, or what they call man, is reason. A man is a reasoning animal. Reason is the highest faculty. So Aristotle, a brilliant man, obviously, but enormously strong emphasis that this is what philosophy is about, to use reason, logic, clarity of thought, and to come to decisive knowledge. So insofar as it's the intelligence, reason, logic, then it looks like the culmination is in, as this question suggests, in critical thinking and justification. This is to a large extent what science is about, and that is you make your empirical observations, your discoveries, your observations, and then you formulate it in a paper and you publish. And you say, voila, there's my work, there's my paper, there's my book, and give me a prize. So the culmination of this is in some articulation. And in fact, some people would go so far to say as a scientific discovery is not a discovery until it's published. I've heard scientists say that. That's when it really happens. In Buddhism, all schools of Buddhism, there are some generalizations that can be made. The highest insight is not conceptual. The highest insight is not rational, that is locked into a conceptual grid of prapancha. The highest realization, the direct realization of nirvana, when you achieve stream entry, or the fullest realization when you achieve nirvana, or become a samyak sambuddha, is not conceptual. It transcends the conceptual. It transcends the very bifurcation of subject and object. It transcends all conceptual frameworks, and that's where the deepest transformation takes place. Liberation is by way of direct experience, called, and I love this quote that is so prominent here in the Buddhist library, citing Dhammakirti, all success stems from valid knowledge. The Sanskrit term there is pramana. There are two types of pramana. There's anumana, valid knowledge by way of inference. But what's the point of that? Valid knowledge by way of direct perception, pratyaksha. Anumana may soften up your mental afflictions, but it won't sever them at the root. It's only pratyaksha, direct, non-mediated, non-conceptual, immediate experience. That liberates. So I think it's a fundamental difference. It's a fundamental difference between the Greek tradition. Having said that, the Greek tradition is multifaceted. So if we look at the lineage going through Aristotle and then later Roman philosophers, very much this emphasis on reason, all the different schools. But on the other hand, we have this other theme, and that's the Pythagoreans. And Pythagoras, according to legend, we know very little about him, but according to legend, and it may actually be true, it said he could remember 20 of his past lives, including both human and non-human. And he started in the south of Italy a settlement that was more like a monastic community than simply a philosophical school. They were training. They were training in different aspects, and it was experiential. They had diet, they almost certainly had meditative training, and he may very well have taught samadhi. Who knows, maybe some of his own disciples achieved deep samadhi as well. There are legends he traveled to Egypt, and may in Egypt have actually had contact with the knowledge of India. Because at that time, this is historical knowledge, there was a lot of traffic back and forth from South Asia over to Egypt, and then onto the Mediterranean Peninsula, and it was the Indians traveling west and bringing their gymnosophists. A gymnosophist means a naked wise person, and they were probably Jains of the Jaina tradition, And then later on, they were very likely Buddhist. And so it seems, according to Edward Conze, I'm going on too long, but there were very possibly Buddhist monks in Egypt, 2,000 years ago. It's very possible, because they traveled. They would hitch a ride with the merchants in their caravans traveling up into Central Asia and in their ships traveling west. So there very well could have been Buddhists there. So the point there is that to make a generalization about all of Greek thought probably is an overgeneralization. There were the mystery schools. They may very well have had some very deep meditative practices. Pythagoras himself clearly articulated, advocated reincarnation. So did Socrates. Socrates spoke very clearly about it, and how, by the power of desire and craving, one in the bardo, in the antarabhava, following death, actually craves for re-embodiment and then takes the next rebirth, whereas the philosopher then may ascend to a higher realm. From reading Socrates, I don't think Socrates, Plato had knowledge of nirvana, but I think they did have knowledge of the form realm. And so the philosopher would go up to maybe the realm of Brahma, of Brahman. Possible. So I'm going always too long, sorry. But I think this is a fundamental difference, and that is the culmination of Buddhist practice is immediate, non-conceptual, direct realization. Culmination of philosophy is thinking really smart thoughts. You mentioned that shamatha meditation aims to relax our mind. What if we feel numbness or uncomfortable with long sitting? Oh, shift your position. Don't feel numb, don't feel uncomfortable. It's not helpful. In shamatha, physical discomfort is just a distraction. So find a nice cushion where your legs don't fall asleep. If you can't be comfortable sitting cross-legged, sit in a chair. If you can't sit in a chair comfortably, lie down. Or I had one person, he's been to many of my retreats, including a 3-month retreat last year. Older man, I think 70, so I'd say older. Not really old. Since I'm 58, I'll be there in 12 years. But he bought himself, what was it called? A zero-gravity chair. I'm not trying to advertise a name brand. I don't get any commission. But he bought this chair that he would bring with him to all the retreats, because he could not. He was an older man, I think some problem with his legs or back. He couldn't sit like that, not so comfortably in a chair. So he got this chair, the chair that he can unfold, and it would support his body quite evenly, distribute the weight. He was a good meditator, 8-9 hours a day, every day. But he was very relaxed. The seat of this chair that he held him well. And he came to many retreats, and he's still meditating, I think, 3 or 4 hours a day. So we can make use of modern technology. Okay? But you don't want to be uncomfortable. In previous meditations, certain images arise in my mind. Where do these images come from? Are they mental imprints from previous lives? Or they could be. Most likely, they're coming from more near-term memories, experiences, and so forth. They're arising right out of the space of the mind. They dissolve right back into the space. I'll draw very briefly, but we'll come back to this tomorrow. In the Dzogchen lineage, now we're talking about this current from India up to Tibet, Dzogchen, or in Sanskrit, Mahasandhi. They speak of the alaya vijnana. So again, talk about this much more tomorrow, very brief tonight. Alaya vijnana, sometimes called repository consciousness, storehouse consciousness. I will call it substrate consciousness. In this regard, as this is unpacked in the Dzogchen tradition very experientially, this is not just philosophical baggage, that the space of the mind is called the alaya. Your awareness of that space of the mind is called the alaya vijnana. So substrate consciousness. The alaya is just that space. And when your whole mind, in the Pali javana, all the activities of the mind, the sensory perceptions, memories, thoughts, and all of that, when everything calms down, then all of these appearances dissolve into a vacuous space of the mind, and that we call the alaya. And so when you fall deep asleep, now this is true in the Theravada tradition as well as in the Mahayana. In the Theravada, this is called the bhavanga. When you fall deep asleep into dreamless sleep, your mind implodes into what is called the bhavanga. Okay? So I'm often called the life continuum. I choose a little bit different translation. Bhava means to become. Anga has different meanings, but one of them is basis or foundation. So one possible translation, ground of becoming. Ground of becoming. It is the ground, this bhavanga, the ground out of which the jhana emerge. One possible interpretation. But I'll slip back to where I'm more familiar, the alaya vijnana. Where do these thoughts come from? These appearances to the mind, the chit-chat, mental images and all of that, they emerge out of the alaya, they dissolve back into the alaya. Where do all these subjective impulses of desires, emotions, hopes, and fears, where do they emerge from? They emerge out of the alaya vijnana, they dissolve back into the alaya vijnana. Whenever you fall asleep, your mind, your psyche, woman's psyche, man's psyche, dissolves into the alaya vijnana. Then it arises when you dream, dissolves back into the alaya vijnana when you fall deep asleep again. So you're oscillating in and out 5 to 7 cycles of dreaming every night. Then likewise in the Mahayana and the Theravada tradition, when you die and your mind implodes, the mind no longer supported by the brain, the nervous system, the body, you lose your mind. Where does it go? It doesn't dissolve into thin air. It doesn't simply become nothing. Your mind implodes into, Theravada tradition, the bhavanga. The last moment in the dying process, you've slipped into the bhavanga, okay? The ground of becoming. In the Mahayana, specifically the Dzogchen tradition, your whole mind at the point of death slips into alaya vijnana. And the descriptions are very similar. So that's where thoughts come from. Now, now I'm speaking now Dzogchen tradition, also Mahayana. This alaya vijnana is a repository of really inconceivable number of memories and so forth. So when you go very deeply into the alaya vijnana, you may actually stir up memories. It's possible. From past life. It can happen in a dream, because the contents of the dream also are emerging out of the alaya vijnana. You could have dreams that are influenced by past lives. Most likely, most dreams just influenced by events of this life. Okay? Difficult to tell which is which. What is the equivalent of the first jhana to the bodhisattva path and grounds? Oh, no equivalent. There is no equivalent. First jhana is something shared by Buddhists, non-Buddhists. Very possibly Pythagoras achieved the first jhana. If he could really remember 20 lifetimes, he probably had the first jhana. So the first jhana does not entail being Buddhist, not taking refuge, not belief in anything. It's just developing a very high degree of attention skills, right? And it comes with virtue. Now we see in the case of Devadatta, the Buddha's cousin, he achieved not only the first jhana, all 4. And by achieving these jhanas, he also achieved the siddhis, or paranormal abilities. And he displayed them. He liked to display them, I think. He showed them off to one king. He showed off, look what I can do, right? And so he, as a samadhi expert, he was quite accomplished. But then his mind turned. If this were Star Wars, we say his mind turned to the dark side, right? Because then he looked upon his cousin, the Buddha, and he became jealous, became very envious. And he actually asked the Buddha to step down. He said, you're getting old. Why don't I take over? The Buddha said, maybe not. But when his mind bent to non-virtue, this is a beautiful, beautiful thing about the jhanas. If your mind bends to and gets stuck in non-virtue, like envy and then ill will and hatred, you lose your jhana. So he couldn't sustain his paranormal abilities, his siddhis, his abhijñā, the heightened awareness or extrasensory. You can't sustain that. Because you slip into ill will, it just erodes it like acid in the bottom, it just falls out. So he lost everything. And then all he did was accrue terrible karma, and there he was, you know. So that's a beautiful thing about the jhanas. Now, bodhisattva path and grounds. You achieve the first, there are 5 bodhisattva paths. Really quick primer, 5 bodhisattva paths, Mahayana path of accumulation. You achieve the first, the initial stage, there are 3 stages of Mahayana path of accumulation. Sambara Marga, I think it's called. The first stage, you achieve that when your bodhicitta arises effortlessly, spontaneously. It just naturally flows. It's catalyzed by anything. It's become your motivation of motivations, right? When that arises spontaneously, then you're a bodhisattva. Then you have achieved the initial stage of the first bodhisattva path of accumulation. Now, there's not complete uniformity here, but many of the great scholars, Buddhist scholars, believe that in order for bodhicitta to arise so spontaneously, effortlessly, uncontrived, what quality of mind do you need to bring to the cultivation of bodhicitta? Shamatha. You must have a mind that's serviceable, that's free of this dysfunction of laxity, dullness, and all of that. So there are many who believe, first you must at least achieve access to the first jhana. Make your mind beautifully serviceable, a clean pot. Then you pour in the teachings on bodhicitta, you develop spontaneous bodhicitta. Then you develop the insight from the satipatthana, or in Sanskrit, smrityupasthana, that stabilizes, reinforces, makes impregnable your bodhicitta so you'll never lose it. So you achieve